Please.
Yeah, I'll just read out the tilawat. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس.
Okay, Jazakumullah. Right, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Today I've been asked to talk about the Holy Quran's response to science. And once again, it is for everyone to join in and give their comments as well. Now, when we talk about science, obviously this is something which I'm sure every Dayanla faces. People will try and come along and try to prove that religion is no good. Science has disproved religion. Especially they will quote from the Bible, of course, that the Bible mentions how the universe was created in 7 days. Of course, it's also in the Holy Quran. And that man has only been around for 7,000 years, whereas the earliest fossil was found about 3 to 4 million years ago. And so they attack religion, saying, oh, this is nonsense, you can't stand up to science. Now, of course, alhamdulillah, we are fortunate that whilst the same things are there in many cases, the Holy Quran expounds on it much more, especially for instance, the 7 days, the Holy Quran uses the word yom. And yom, of course, can mean a day, 24 hours, but it can also mean weeks, months, years, billions of years. It's a period of time. And this is something which, again, I often, with this particular question, pose back to them, that how can, you talk about the day, and the day is 24 hours, means the sun has to be there, and the sun wasn't even created. So obviously it doesn't mean a 24-hour day. And again, with the Holy Quran, it doesn't say that Adam is the first man, and it still started 7,000 years ago, but he was the first prophet. We believe, of course, that man was a long time before that. But the main thing when we are tackling this, we may not be scientists. I'm certainly not a scientist. I'm sure many of you are not scientists, but we have the Holy Quran. And alhamdulillah, the Holy Quran informs us what the true science is. And this is something which we need to emphasize to them, that look, the science means the work of Allah. And the Holy Quran is the word of Allah. So it will go hand in hand. Whereas science is something which develops according to knowledge. At one point, they thought that the world was flat and that the earth was the center of the universe. Now, with the aid of telescopes and so on and so forth, they know that this is not the case. But the word of God will give the real account, whether that knowledge is there or not. And this is something, again, which we need to bear in mind, that in the time of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, of course, he couldn't even read or write, and he didn't go to university or anything like that. There was no known universities in Arabia. He wasn't around people who were known to be scientists. So whatever he said at the time, it was not from him. It had to be from Allah. And the second thing, of course, was that the known, let's say, science at that time was not what the Holy Quran was saying. So if Holy Prophet Muhammad is saying such and such verse, there was no way for him to prove it, because the science of that time may have been completely different to the understanding which the Holy Quran is giving. So this is something which we need to keep emphasizing to these people like this, that the true science is the work of God, and the work of God will go hand in hand with the word of God. And so therefore the real science is found in the Holy Quran. Now, as I said, with today's technology, we have these microscopes, we have these telescopes and things like that, and they're able to mention so many wonderful things and proving whatever science they want to for these day and age. But I say, we have got the Holy Quran, which is the best science. Now, you may not know the science, you may not be able to answer them. You can come to this YMD website that I have got here, and where I mentioned many of these things. Or there is, I think it's called Rationality Religion website. Again, that's been made for the atheists and for the scientists. Answers many of the things there. A good reference book, of course, is Hazur's book, The Fourth Khalifa, Rahimahullah, Revelations, Rationality, Knowledge and Truth, I think it was called. Again, he has dealt with many of these sorts of things. But anyway, let's go through what little knowledge that I have. And I say, I will stop at every bit. I'm going to briefly go through this. You need to really read through it yourselves, because I'm not going to waste time on this. I want to really discuss this with yourselves. One of the objections that's being raised, of course, is the theory of the Big Bang. And I'm sure you all know this, but basically what they say is that there was a closed up mess and it opened up. And that's what the telescopes prove to this day and age of how the universe is expanding. There are two theories in that, of course, that it's still expanding to this day and age. Or there's the yo-yo theory, which I use, is that it has reached a point, it comes back and then reaches a lesser point and comes back and reaches a lesser point and comes back. Just like a yo-yo will go down and then come back up and then go down lesser and then come back up and go down lesser. Whatever theory, because they're saying it's still expanding one way or another, they believe that it began with this Big Bang. Now, as I said, with the Holy Prophet Muhammad, he didn't know anything about this. And with the verse that I'm going to give now, if he showed it at that time, no one would have been able to prove it. And so it was just his word as such. But when I am faced with this particular thing from scientists, I throw it back at them. That yes, okay, the Big Bang happened. This is what you've proven. But how? How did it happen? When we look at modern technology today, we have an atom bomb, a hydrogen bomb. It can blow up a city, maybe. I don't think it can, but if you had many of them, it could blow up the Earth. But we're not talking about an explosion that can blow up the Earth. When we look at the sun, the Earth can fit into the sun at 1.3 million times, they say, to fill out that Earth, 1.3 million times. But we're not talking about an explosion that will blow up the sun. We're looking at the universe, all those stars, all those solar systems that are around each star, all coming together as a closed up mess. And something was so powerful that it split them all up, it opened them all up. And to this day, it is still moving away from each other. So what caused that explosion? The scientists can't answer this. They may say some sort of energy or whatever, they can't answer it. But alhamdulillah, the Holy Quran can. So when we see now the Quran, it states in chapter 21, verse 31, do not the disbelievers see that the heavens and the earth was a closed up mess? Then we opened them up. So exactly the same theory. It was a closed up mess, and then it opened up. But the answer of how it happened, this is the most important thing, that we, God, opened them up. And this is what the scientists, like I say, they can't answer, but alhamdulillah, it's found there, the knowledge is found there in the Holy Quran. And this is the beauty of the Holy Quran, that it talks about all these wonderful systems. Now, of course, with the telescope, they can tell you the systems, and we can see that planets don't clash into them. They've all got their own system. But the remarkable thing is that even if you take an atom with the aid of a microscope, you see systems. Again, the same sort of systems are there, that the atoms and the neutrons and protons and things like that, they're all having their own systems within an atom, the smallest thing known to man. And this is what the Holy Quran says, that we have not created the heavens and the earth and all that is between them, but with an eternal purpose and for appointed term. So there's a purpose behind all this. And again, when we see the stars in the universe, so many stars, beautiful, we can't even see the end of the universe. Why are these stars there? They can't just be nice, pretty patterns and so on and so forth. There is a purpose. And this is what the Holy Quran states, that Allah is Rabb, He's Lord of all the worlds, the creator, not only creating, but He's a sustainer. He keeps providing us with food, drink and air to this very day. And so everything he has done, there is a purpose behind it. And this is something which I often throw back at anyone, not just scientists, but anyone, that why are we created? What is the purpose of our creation? If there's a God who's created us, there must be a purpose. And of course, the Holy Quran again gives us this answer, that we are created to worship God, that there's a purpose of this physical life to develop into the spiritual life, to have this journey through out time towards God. And so it's the same with the universe. There's an eternal purpose which Allah has made. And of course, these days, the scientists will give up on the theory of a spaceship going to the nearest or life form. Now they use things like stargates and tunnels and things like this, of how we can transport from one area to another area. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think we can meet life from other planets. But certainly we believe that there is life on other planets, and they have their purpose just as we have our purpose. So there's no need for us to meet. And of course, if they did come and meet us, as the Holy Quran says, people who create this order. Even recently in this virus times, there's protests which went out of control and disorder happened. So more than likely, we would blow them out of the skies, and they would know this, and they would blow us out of the skies. So there's no purpose for meeting, but we understand that, yes, there could be life in other planets. It's all a purpose which Allah has. And this, as I said, is the beauty of Allah, that there are these wonderful systems that he has created. So again, we see, for instance, the water cycle. Now, the Holy Quran may not have exactly that there is the water mass, and then of course the water evaporates and forms into clouds, and then the clouds come together, and then it goes over the mountains, and then it turns into rain, and it makes the streams back into the water, and so the cycle happens. But each part is described in the Holy Quran, and you can put them together. You've got the water cycle. It's well known today. Children learn about the water cycle, but the fact of the matter is that this system of the water cycle was not known at the time of the Holy Prophet. It was only, as it mentions here, Bernard Palissy, again, forgive me of these words, I can't pronounce them properly, but anyway, he was the one that gave a first clear formation of the water cycle in 1580. It's only about 500 years ago. And yet 1500 years ago, the Holy Prophet was giving these verses about the water cycle and so many other things. Again, we know about how the moon reflects the light of the sun. It itself cannot generate the light. Common knowledge these days, but in the time of the Holy Prophet, they didn't know these sorts of things. They saw the moon, they saw the light, they presume, obviously the lights come from the moon. But the Holy Quran tells how the moon reflects the light of the sun. Again, these days, common knowledge, we know that everything has two sexes. The plant reproduction system there has two sexes. And it's a wonderful question of Allah, that everything Allah's created, there's not two things exactly the same. If we have identical twins, there's still differences. But everything has two sexes. There is a reproduction system going on, which again shows a creator. And again, it was mentioned in the Holy Quran that everything has these two sexes. So as I said, in the time of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, if he related any of these verses and he was challenged, he couldn't prove them. There was no microscopes, there was no telescopes. But these days with the modern science, alhamdulillah, what they're doing is supporting what the Holy Quran has been teaching for 1500 years. Although these verses say 1400 years, of course 100 years has now passed. So we're in the 1500 years. So this is the beauty of the Holy Quran. I'll go on the next point of evolution in a second, but now I'm opening up to anybody who wants to make some comment, or maybe some way they've tackled these sort of questions, or some query they may have on what I've just said. So has anybody got anything they would like to say before I move on? Don't be quiet on me. This is a discussion group.
No, that was clear. Jazakallah.
Okay, no one's got anything. You can raise your hand, or you can, I think they can unmute themselves, can't they?
Yeah, everyone is able to unmute themselves, and you can also, if you like, you can please just raise your hand as well. And so we know who's next as well. And please do, ask your questions.
Okay, I'm going to move on. We can come back to that. That's not a problem. But let's move on now to evolution. I'm going to say to move on. Is it going to move on? Has anything happened? Oh, there we go. Okay, so another attack on religion is evolution. As I said earlier, that the oldest fossil is 3.5 million years ago. We call it Lucy. Why is it not coming on the screen? Come on, yeah. It's going slow. So, and again, we know about Darwin's theory. It should be on your screen now. Hopefully it's on your screen, yeah?
Yep, it's just loaded now.
Come on.
Yeah, we can
Great.
see.
Okay, now, I'm often criticized by this. They say, oh, no, Darwin did not say we evolved from apes. Whatever, the fact is that the theory of Darwin is that man came from the apes, whether he actually literally said that or not. That's how it's described by scientists today, that we developed from an ape, went through different forms until we came to the modern man as such. But what Holy Qur'an states is that there was a separate species that we develop differently to other creation. And the easiest example I give for this is free will. It's a great blessing from Allah that we can make choices, but we are the only creation on this planet that has free will. An ape doesn't have free will. A dog doesn't have free will. Nothing else has free will. A dog can't go into the wardrobe and decide what this is going to wear today. Yes, we can dress up a dog, we can dress up a chimpanzee, but they themselves have not got the ability to develop, to make choices that we have. It's a great blessing that we have, but the fact is that we have it and they do not have it. So if we had evolved from the apes or anything like that, they too should have had free will. That's the easiest way to describe this thing. But generally, as we say, that we don't believe that Adam was the first prophet. We believe that life was before that. But there was a slow development, as the Holy Quran says, at time, an insignificant thing. And we went into different stages. And this is what the Holy Quran explains, that we went through these different stages until we became the man of today. And of course, we believe that evolution is always happening and it will keep happening. So we have no qualms with evolution, but there's a difference. We believe in a guided evolution, not a blind evolution. That Allah guided us each step that man took, and you can see what the steps that they say here, until we get to the present time. So they say that the present human beings appeared on the earth maybe about 35,000 to 40,000 years ago. Of course, as I said, the first man, they say maybe was about 3.5 million at the time. They may discover something else, because that's a wonderful thing about science, that they keep finding new discoveries. The Holy Quran does not obviously give a particular time when it happened, but it gives you this concept that there were different stages that we progressed through. Now, there's two ways of understanding this. One is that Allah removes a certain people, like the Jews, and replace them with another people, like the Muslims. And another one is literally that they took man from one form to another form. So here's some verses, and I said, please, in your own free time, you can go to the White Ahmadi at any point and read these. This is under the title, what is it, under the title of, well, as you can see, atheism. So if you go to atheism, and then you can find this work. So basically what the Holy Quran says, we can see some of the verses here about how Allah does away with one people and succeeds it with another people, and how he created us in different forms, in different conditions. And of course, people say, well, it's quite general, but it is that it's there and it's written, and this is how we understand it according to our understandings. I'm sure the Holy Prophet at his time had a different understanding to these verses. And maybe 100 years ago, they had different understanding. And as we progress, and as we know more science, so we can apply that science to the understanding of the Holy Quran. So basically, it's giving you this notion that man had gone through these different stages and developed. Okay, next we come on to this blind or guided evolution. But before we do, again, it's up to you. Has anybody got any questions they'd like to ask this time? Yeah, very quiet. Come on, yeah. No?
You can also, if you'd like to use the chat option as well to possibly send in your question there as well. You can hopefully answer.
I'm sure, like I say, most people would have to face these sort of people. I'm sure you've all, in your Tabligh, had to face someone who's questioned these sort of things. And this is what I want to hear, how you answer them. But anyway, let me move on a bit more, and then hopefully people will have some questions. Gee.
Yeah, I just had a question as well. I mean, like, as we're talking about, the world as well with the science, there was a time when people thought that the world is flat and it's not round as well. How, and is that I'm not sure if you just mentioned that as well, but is that also something that is mentioned in the Holy Quran as well? And we also, how can we also use this to use it as Tabligh as well, to when we're doing Tablighs outside and so on?
We can use this in a very nice way.
Yep.
It was actually the Muslims using the Holy Quran who told Columbus that keep going, don't worry about an edge, you're not going to fall off the edge, keep going, the world is round. And that's how America was actually discovered. So Columbus actually went to Muslim scientists and Muslim technology or understanding, and they were the ones that convinced him that the world was round. Otherwise, when they looked out to the horizon, of course, they thought it was, you fall off the edge. That was a known science there. So the Muslims, they got it from this Holy Quran. At that time, of course, many Muslims used the Holy Quran and knowledge in the Holy Quran and discovered many of the things that is very common these days and advanced the whole of mankind. And this is actually what we say, that through the universities in Spain, the people in the West from England and places like that attended these universities, gained knowledge, and actually brought them out of the Dark Ages, what was known as the Dark Ages in the West. So it was all thanks to the Muslims using the Holy Quran, using this knowledge, translating earlier texts from Greek and then applying the knowledge in the Holy Quran to make these further discoveries. So yes, they were the first ones that started telling people that the world is round, and that convinced Columbus to actually discover America, go beyond the horizon. So that's the easiest, simplest way of answering that particular question that you asked. Okay, chance or planned evolution, blind or guided evolution, in other words. As I said, the concept the scientists will say is mutation, that we mutated and we developed until we got to where we are today. Again, if you read the book by the fourth Caliph Rahimahullah, he's used examples like the cuckoo, where the cuckoo has a sort of sponge on its beak where it's at a tree. And if he didn't have that sort of cushion, then every time he pecked, he would have knocked his brains out. So how would it be developed? The cushion must have been there for him to have been the cuckoo he is. Otherwise, if that wasn't already there, it wasn't something that mutated, it had to be there because that's a habit of the cuckoo. If you understand what a cuckoo does, it taps on the tree as such. The eye, again, we use the cameras these days, everybody's got their mobile phones. It's similar to what the eye is. How did the eye evolve? We had to see from the beginning, and it was a beautiful system that was already there. It didn't evolve as such. So mutation is there, but everything is guided. And this is basically what they say, that I'm going to skip through this again, but let me get to the bit that I want to get to. I think it's around here. Okay, so basically what they say is there's many theories, but they said there was what they call a big soup, and that the DNA come out of the big soup. It got baked at precisely the right time and then somehow came back into the big soup. A fraction of a second more or a fraction of a second less, this cycle would have gone on and on and on, and we would have developed. It had to be exactly that particular time. And this has baffled the scientists. They say, we know it happened because we're here. But how did it happen? Mathematically, it's possible. But realistically, it's impossible. And they use many different things. Here I got one where they get the printing blocks and it represents the 26 letters of the alphabet, and that by chance you can keep throwing them and a pattern or a poem which you know would happen. One I was taught when I was very young, maybe you know about it, was putting chimpanzees in a room with typewriters, and eventually they would knock out the complete works of Shakespeare. If you can believe that this could happen, then this stage also happened. I think it was the fourth Caliph of Rahimahullah, again, he said that if you put a 1 in a room and fill the whole room with noughts, that is the equation for that step to happen. So basically what they're saying is that mathematically, yes, it can happen, and of course it did happen, but realistically, there's no way that it should have happened unless it was that Allah guided it to happen. So this is what we say, that yes, evolution happened, the different stages happened, but Allah made it happen each different step. So again, here, this bit about the driving in clay, what I understand from that is this verse here, chapter 15, verse 27. And surely we created man from driving in clay, of blood, of black mud wrought into shape. So as I said, they believed there was this big soup, as they call it, and that the DNA came out, got baked, and then returned. So it was like mud being baked, and so it becomes dry, ringing clay. Again, if you look in the commentary of this, it talks about sound and things like that. The second Caliph, this is how he understood it, and so on and so forth. With the technology and understanding we have now, so this is how we can apply it to the present day understanding. Maybe in the future they'll have a different way of understanding it. But this is how I generally will try to explain this process and how Allah guided us by each stage. And so we say it was it was not a blind evolution, that being that happened by chance, but it was a guided evolution, that Allah step by step made everything happen. Okay, anything on that one? Still quiet. I thought you'd be talking a lot about this today. Okay, shall I move on?
I mean, I've got a question if no one else has a question. I mean, just I mean, I want to ask, you know, as it's stated there as well. I wanted to ask that, you know, when we are explaining to our friends again, you know, when we're trying to explain to them about the same verse and so on, you know, they would kind of question us to, you know, that, oh, come on, like, you know, how maybe let's say that what's the chances of this? You know, that's what they will kind of ask in the response. So how can we kind of obviously, I mean, we do refer to the Holy Quran as it states as well, but how can we, in other forms, maybe kind of and logically kind of explain to them as well, possibly?
I mean, as I said, for the science, the way it developed, the chance, they themselves have used examples, and there are some examples quoted there, there are other examples, to show that it's mathematically impossible. Again, normally, if I'm talking to a person about this, I would say, look, you know, just look around. You see such variety. It's a wonderful thing. Any animal, not just man, any animal, it has different shapes, different sizes, and so on and so forth. There's no two things that's the same. And this, again, to me, shows that it's a creator every step, that he's making such variety. And we talk about this even just on the spiritual side. Some people say about, I think we talked about maybe before, that Iblis, was he the only spiritual thing? He had to be an angel and so on and so forth. So of course, Allah creates this wonderful variety, and it's something which we should appreciate. And we can see these sorts of things. Again, I mean, when we're talking about life as such, we see that, you know, everything had to have something else to survive. For instance, for us, if we had the body, then we needed food. And it just so happens that the food that we can nourish, that our stomach can take, happens to be around. We need air, and it just so happens that the air that we need to breathe for our lungs happens to be there, and so on and so forth. So I often use the example that how long would you survive on the moon? There is no food for us to eat. There is no water. There is no air. So obviously we die after a few seconds. But everything that we need to survive happens to be here available for us. And so we've got life. And that's one example of man. But you can apply it to every single living thing. There's not one living thing on the world, on the earth, which doesn't need anything else to survive. Everything needs something else to survive. How did this happen? So to say it's all an accident, it doesn't make any sense at all. It shows that everything was planned, developed, and made sure that it all worked. And again, I say, if you just look at the human body, it's such a wonderful thing. We can pick up heavy weights, and yet we can feel the slightest thing. We don't understand even the human body today. There are still some things we don't understand about it. But what we do understand is that it is a wonderful bit of technology which we can't reproduce, even at that moment. You can reproduce maybe a shell, you can't reproduce the soul and so on and so forth. How did all this happen without a creator? And that's the main point we're trying to emphasize all the time, that there was a creator. This knowledge of the Holy Qur'an was unknown. Even today, we haven't got this knowledge, but God has told us this knowledge. And this is the wonderful thing, proving him to be a creator. So this is what I'm saying, that everyone has in Tabligh their own way of presenting things. This is how I would present it. I'm sure many people have different ways in which they will present it. They may have different understandings and so on and so forth. And that's what we need to do in Tabligh, that we need to present and see which argument works and which doesn't work, and develop our presentation. And so our knowledge gains every time we do Tabligh. So we should never fear doing Tabligh. We should go out, spread the message. Yes, we may get it wrong sometimes, but you will learn from that. And so, inshallah, you will learn how to present arguments in the best way. So these are some of the ways in which I would try to prove that there is a God, and how the Holy Quran helps us to understand that it's all come from Allah, and God is the best of all creators.
Jazakallah, Rabbi Sab. We've got a hand up from Ahmed. I'm just going to unmute.
Yeah, sure.
Assalamu alaikum, Rabbi Sab.
Welcome, sir.
Rabbi Sab, so as you explained, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, created everything in through evolution. So what's the fundamental argument of atheists, like how they use evolution? How do they use evolution as a way to counter the existence of God?
As I said, they believe that it was all mutation and that it was all accident. This is what because they don't want to believe there's a creator. So they're trying to come away from creation and trying to show science. So they will present the argument that we have mutated from an ape, or even maybe before that. So I say maybe it was initially when we was in that soup, that big soup that they say. Maybe it came that we was some sort of small little floating insect, and then we developed, not floating insect, some insect that fish, and developed from the fish, and finally we came out of the water like a crocodile, and then we started swinging on the trees and become like an ape, and then we developed until what we got today. So this is how they will present it. It's all a sort of evolution process that came to what we are today. But as I said, this the easiest way I would find to answer that is free will. And what answer they've got for that? Because no other creation has got free will. So how come we've got the free will and other creation hasn't got the free will? If we are developed from them, it means then that at some point of that development, the free will came in. I don't know, maybe some lightning stroke a man and gave him free will, or whatever. It doesn't make any sense for us to have that choice, and that's how we have developed. So this is what they say, that it's mutation, it was all an accident. And we present, obviously, that no, it's not an accident. How can it be an accident? Everything's got this wonderful system. And as I said, you can use a telescope and you see the space and you see a beautiful system there where things do not clash into each other. It's all orbiting around each other and so on and so forth. And yet you get the microscope and you can go to the smallest thing like an atom. Again, you see a system happening there. So that system shows that it's not an accident. An accident is that you chuck something in the air and it all falls down into a mess. Not that it all falls down into a beautiful computer and it's got Zoom working and so on and so forth. That is not an accident. That is something which has been created. So this is how you, I mean, like I say, you can answer it however way you want, but that's generally how they would try to explain life through mutation and accidents. And we will present it that no, everything has been guided by a creator. And so they have to believe that there is some sort of power that has done this. And generally, they will come to some sort of energy, some sort of power. They won't like to say it's God, but they have to sort of admit that, yes, this couldn't really be an accident. But you need to press them. You need to obviously present your arguments and give them no way out of it. Okay, anything else, or shall I move on to the human ecology?
I just had a
G?
sorry, a slightly different offshoot, but some of my non-MD Muslim friends, they carry the view, they have a literal approach to all this, that men were actually created from clay, and also that there was a number of days that the whole universe was created. How would you approach answering that?
I don't know if you was here at the beginning. I opened up with the days. Did you hear that?
Yeah, I missed the first 5 minutes.
Okay, right. I mean, for the days, obviously, like the Bible says that the universe was created in 7 days. It's equally mentioned in the Holy Qur'an. But that's an easy one, because in Islam, the word day is yom. And yom can mean 24-hour day. It can be weeks, it can be years, it can be hundreds of years, it can be 1,000 years. In fact, it's a period of time. So generally, when we say 7 days, we're talking about, according to the Holy Quran, 7 periods. And then that fits in, of course, because obviously the universe happened about 20 to 30 billion years ago. So that was periods that it happened. So this is the way you answer the days, which is, like you say, the yom, the word yom. I forgot what the first bit was now. What was the first bit you wanted to know?
Sorry. They also say that all
clay.
men were made from clay, literally, rather than.
Well, what is clay? Clay basically is mud and water mixed, and that's what clay is. We are not a piece of putty and developed like that. Obviously, the Holy Quran talks about how we developed from a slow sperm and developed through, which we're going to go on in a minute. So it's not as many of them think that Adam was the first man, bam, it suddenly happened, and then we split Adam in half and we made a woman from his rib, and we made that into a woman, and that nonsense. We don't believe this at all. The Holy Quran is quite clear that we were at one stage an insignificant thing. It was a slow development that took many billions of years, or I don't know how long it took, but this slow development from an absolute nothing, or coming out of the big soup, into finally what we are today. But what we're saying is that Allah made each and every stage of that development. It wasn't an accident as such. But this idea of literally Allah coming along and getting a bit of clay and, oh here we are, I'll put a head there and we'll put a body. This is nonsense. This is just fantasy. So we don't believe that literally. But obviously, this is the problem. When you start taking the Holy Quran literally, you're going to run into many, many different problems. So here I'm seeing right in front of me, he has created you from clay. If you're going to take that literally, then you get this idea of getting a bit of, I don't know, what do you call it, plasticine or stuff like that, making a man. So it's a slow process. And basically we need to understand that we are partly water, and everything in life is about water. And from that and from the earth, these sorts of things develop, and that's how Allah makes these things happen. So it's not literally like, say, a bit of plasticine or whatever, a bit of clay, but a slow process that developed us into what we are today. But that's the problem, like I say. If you're going to take things literally, you're going to get into all sorts of wonderful problems. Okay, let me move on, and we can always come back if anybody got questions.
Murabi Sab, yes,
Ahmed
we've
wants to
just
say
got
something?
a question from the chat. It's a two-part question. The first one is will science have evolved if will science have evolved if the Quran had not been sent? That's the first one. And the second one is, why is it that scientists are against religion?
Okay, well, first one, obviously science is science. And science, as I said, is basically understanding who we are, what we are, and what's around, and so on and so forth. So, of course, that will evolve. The Holy Quran obviously has said these things, and a lot of Muslims have, over the past, used the Holy Quran to make discoveries. And this is what Abdul Salam, the Professor Abdul Salam once said, that this is what used to happen, that Muslims used to read the Holy Quran and from there make discoveries. Now what's happening is that scientists are making discoveries and Muslims are saying, well, actually that's mentioned in the Holy Quran. So what we should do is come back to that way of, still there's so much knowledge which we do not understand in the Holy Quran, use that knowledge and make the discoveries. But science will have developed, and science is developing, of course, you know. I mean, if we just look at simple thing, transport, how that has developed. We're not going to claim that a car, for instance, is developed because of the Holy Quran. This is not the case. But the Holy Quran does mention that different forms of transport will develop. And in these day and age, we will be not using a camel. It'll be a thing abandoned and so on and so forth. So it's a question of how you understand these things. But yes, science would have developed without the Holy Quran. We're not claiming that. As for the second point, the scientists, the problem with scientists is that they need proof. And the problem with religion is that you need faith. And unless you have that faith, you know, with just proof, you're going to get stuck. And that's what scientists do, that they're not having that faith. They want evidence. They need clear facts. They need to see God in front of them now to say that there's a God. And when you say that, look, you could have a relationship with God through prayers and things like that, they say, no. I want to see God. Of course, my answer to that, I've just answered it just before, is simple. Just look at the human body and you can see God. That how it's designed is a wonderful thing which, you know, scientists can't design a human body like it is with the soul and things like that. They can clone, they can get things similar to it, but generally to design it, that's beyond the knowledge at the moment. Even the robots and things will not have a soul and so on and so forth. So that's the easiest way to answer these sorts of things. But generally that's why scientists, they can't prove God. So because they can't prove something, they dismiss it. And they will try and use the scientific arguments to prove that. But there has been, like Professor Salam, many scientists who actually believed in God. Even Darwin, I believe, believed in God, even with his evolution theory, because it's very hard to not believe in a greater power that's created. But they will try to show that it happened without an agency of God. And that's how they will present their arguments. And that's why we have to prove to them that, no, what you're saying is wrong. Everything needed a creator. And this is what is supported in the Holy Quran. So that's a basic way of answering it. I mean, it is basic, but obviously it depends on the person, how you develop your arguments and how you present it. Okay, anybody else, or shall we move on? No, we do for time. Okay, we've gone past time. We're okay to carry on for a little bit?
Yeah, that's fine by month. I think we've got another hand up, but would you like to?
No, that's I prefer answering people's questions. So yeah, by all means, who's asking? Oh, here we are, Ahmed again. Right, yes, Ahmed, please.
I think one of the things like scientists want is not only proof, but like a specific kind of proof. They want like physical proof instead, because of course, like in terms of like belief, in terms of in the existence of God, we can find proof as well. But they want like a specific kind of proof that, you know, applicable in obviously in terms of faith.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem. And really, I mean, no matter what we say, the only real way you're going to believe in the existence of God is through prayer. You can use all these science and all these things, and that will get you so far. But to be 100% certain, which is what a true Muslim should be, 100% certain that there is a God, the only way you're going to do that is by experiencing God yourself. Not me experiencing God, not you experiencing God. They themselves have to experience God. And the only way they're going to experience God is through prayers. So if they make that effort of praying to God and asking God to show a sign or something like that, then they can become convinced. But that's a problem with the scientists, that they don't want to go through that process because that requires faith and they want proof. So this is the dilemma they have. So we can only prove certain things using science and using logic and reason. But for the true proof of existence of God, that can only be when they personally experience God. And only when you really personally experience God can you really 100% then truly believe that you're in God, that you believe in God. Otherwise, there will be some doubt that will linger on in your minds. So that's up to them. If they are like a scientist experiment, they will spend years and years sometimes doing the science. So they should spend some time finding out whether there truly is a God. Okay, let's move on now to this next bit. And again, you're going to have to read through this because I'm only going to breeze through it. But you see the picture. I like this picture. This is a picture of a drawing that they made in the 17th century of a little man inside a sperm jar. Of course, we know this is nonsense now. But this is what they thought even 17th century, which is what, about three centuries ago. But alhamdulillah, again, this is something which has amazed the scientists, that when they read about the human embryology in the Holy Quran, they're amazed, how is it possible that the Holy Quran spoke about these things without having a microscope? And, you know, they could only, in the time of the Holy Prophet, cut open a person, but you can't see certain things. And without the aid of microscope, there was things which, what the Holy Quran explains, it was impossible to know. So this has baffled the scientists, and they say, well, we don't understand why the Holy Quran is saying these things without admitting, of course, that it's God. So I'm going to jump through all this and come to this last bit here, because this is a bit which I think is easiest for you to understand. So here in chapter 23, verse 15, it states, then we fashioned the sperm into a leech-like thing which clings. And the Arabic word is alaka, which clings. And this talks about how the sperm clings to the womb sort of thing there. And again, like I say, without the microscope, it was impossible to know this at that time. Then we fashioned the alaka, the thing that clings, into a chewed lump. And then we fashioned bones out of the madka, and then we clothed the bone with flesh, and we developed into another creation and Allah's special creations. Now, it's the drawings which makes it easier for me to explain this. Here we see a drawing of a leech and what the embryo is like after 24 days. Now, as I said, without a microscope, you can cut a person up and you're not going to see this, but you can see how similar it is to an actual leech. And alaka can be also meaning leech. And then a chewed up, here we got a sort of ear with teeth marks, a chewed up lump. So again, after 28 days, you can see what it looks like in the womb, and next to it you have a picture of this plastic, looks sort of like an ear with teeth mark in it, and you can see the chewed up lump, how similar it is. And this is what I'm saying, that without the aid of microscope, these things would have been impossible to know in the time of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. And yet the Holy Quran is mentioned these things, and again looking at the many meanings of the word in Arabic, you come to this conclusion. So alhamdulillah, again, baffles the scientists, but proves that, again, it's a word of God. And there's no way the Holy Prophet could have mentioned this even. Why would he mention it? There's no way of proving it. So it's got to be from Allah. Now, I wanted to show you a clip, which is from, well, I don't know if it's available now. Maybe Alex is here, he might know. But it was what was the website in those days, End of Atheism, and now I believe it's Rationality Religion. So it's from the same people, but it's a very nice clip. And if we've got time, I'd like to quickly go through, well, not quickly, I'm going to show it. I think it's only about maybe 5 minutes. But again, it explains this science in a very nice way, which I think will be very helpful for you. I don't know if it's going to show on this. Let's see, because it's not come up yet. It'd be a shame if it can't, because I don't know if this video is available. I might be able to send it to you if it doesn't come up. I've got the link. Or you can, of course, you can go to the website anyway. So the link is there. It doesn't seem to be coming up. Oh, that's a shame. I don't know. Oh, here we are. It's coming up. It's going to take a few minutes, but like I say, it's a very nice video which explains a lot about these things, which I think you'll find very useful. If it's going to show. Oh, here we go. So this is about Richard Dawkins, and Richard Dawkins is one of those people who again try to prove that there is not a God. So they've answered this in a sort of cartoon form, and I don't know if this is going to come up on your screen. You're going to have to let me know, but it's a very nice clip if it happens. Is it going to happen? I don't know, because we're on Zoom. I don't know if this works on Zoom.
It might not work. The sound might not come. I can quickly try from, if you maybe want to play Rob Salfit, please.
When it's playing, I don't know if it's coming on your screen. You got anything coming on your screen yet?
It's just loading at the moment.
Yeah, it's still loading on my side. Let's see if the sound comes. Otherwise, people can go, like I say, it's a YouTube clip. They can go to the website. Because like I say, I don't know if this will work on Zoom. And I don't know if the sound is going to happen. It's taken a long time working on mine. What was you going to suggest? Oh, it's 8 minutes long, 8.5 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to see this. So, okay. I don't think it's going to work. If you want to see the clip, like I say, you can go to the website. It's an old clip, but it's still working because I've looked at it today. But it's worth looking at. It's quite an interesting way of answering this problem. So has anybody got any questions I'd like to ask? And we'll see if this ever happens. Okay, Alex, are you still there? If you're there, maybe you've got something you'd like to say on this? I think he's gone.
Assalamualaikum.
Oh, yeah, he's there. Okay. Yes, Alex, anything you would like to say in the meantime?
Maybe just I noticed that a lot of, we've been referring to scientists having objections against religion. I think one thing I've noticed, particularly when debating with atheists, is that you don't want to fall into this trap of referring to scientists and religious people, because that's exactly what you want. They want you to think that there's science and there's religion, but it wasn't. And before the last 100 years, science and religion weren't two distinct things. They were the same thing, which is why most of the prominent scientists like Newton actually were religious as well as scientists. And it's been that way for most of human history. It's only in the last 100 years, with the rise of new atheism, that they've tried to make a distinction between these. So actually, I think one of the best things you can do with atheist scientists is point out to them the fact that they're not separate things, and they never have been. And that might be a better place to start, rather than saying science and religion as separate things.
I mean, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the work of God and the hand of God goes hand in hand. But generally, why we chose this particular topic is that these are some of the objections that are raised by people. And they use what they term as science, whether they are atheists or not, but they will quote or try to show, because they're so successful against Christianity, that obviously, as it was said earlier, that if they say about the 7 days or things like that, the Christians have got no answer, because they have to stick by whatever their Bible says. but Islam has got the answer. So I don't think we should be too worried about that. You know, the thing is, science has got the answers. So, the Quran has got answers as far as we know. How it would work from there on, I mean, depends on what the people say. Anyway, as I've asked you, because obviously you are studying a lot of things at university and physics and things like that, so you come across these people more. But has anybody else got anything like this or anything we want to say? This video doesn't seem to be working, so you need to see it online if anybody wants to see it. So we'll just now leave it to everybody. If there's anybody got any comments they want to make, or shall we finish it there? I was thinking that today a lot of you would be speaking, but hasn't happened. No? Everybody's quiet.
Assalamu alaikum, Rabbi Sahib.
Welcome, Salam.
Rabbi Sahib, just one of the points made earlier with regards to made of clay. When I discuss similar things with my friends, so for example, you know, they say that jinn is made of fire. I try to give them the example of man being made of haste, and I say, you know, clearly this is metaphorical, so why cannot fire or clay be metaphorical?
Yeah, I mean, it's not jinn made of fire, Iblis is made of fire. But yeah, I mean, obviously, this is a different thing. It's the question of trying to get them to understand what the Holy Quran is saying. And that's why I say, if you start taking things literally, it's going to create all sorts of wonderful problems. But this is not the case. We understand that we have to understand what the Holy Quran is saying. And this is, in fact, the beauty of the Holy Quran, that it applies to everyone. So a simple person who doesn't understand science or anything like that, they can read the Holy Quran to get some instructions from their commandments and things like that. And people want to look deep into it. Again, it appeals to them, and they can understand what the Arabic words are meaning and try to understand what God means by certain verses and look deep into it. But unfortunately, this is a time we are in where a lot of Muslims do take things literally, and that's why it's creating problems for them. Because obviously, if you start taking things literally, then science will exploit that. And that's what they're doing with the 7 days, for instance. They take that literally and say, okay, 7 days. Now, if you apply a day in 24 hours, of course, you know, you can't answer this. So this is why we got to try and get Muslims themselves to understand that the verses are not to be taken literally. You need to think about what Allah is trying to say. And only then can you really understand fully what the Holy Quran is saying. But if you take things literally, you'll get some understanding, but it will also, some confusion will be there. Okay, I think that's the subject for today. And by all means, I hope you do have a look at this video. It's a nice video. I enjoyed it anyway. And if anybody's got any subject they want to talk about for next week, or if they have any questions more they want to raise, again, please send in your questions or speak to Toby or Zaid, and we'll try and answer that next week. Or like I say, if you've got a topic you want to ask or discuss, by all means, again, speak to Toby or Zaid, and we'll try and bring up that topic next week. So let's finish it for today, and we'll finish with silent prayer. So please, can you join me in silent prayer? Bismillah. Amen. Okay, Jazakallah, and hopefully we'll see each other next week. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Well,